the chat will be stored and archived in our public record. So just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. And in just a moment, you should see the little pop-up that says we're live streaming to YouTube. Perfect. And with that, we are going to go ahead and get started with today's training. This is our second, number two of 3 trainings that we will be doing for all of our summer investment partners. As a reminder, last month we went over all of our monthly reporting expectations, and today's session is about explaining the expectations for your final report guidelines. And then next month, what we'll be talking about is how to write a project testimonial or an impact testimonial. Those are the 3 required trainings for you. But before we get started, I do want to take an opportunity to introduce our newest team member, our Director of Finance Operations, Miss Dina Snyder, and ask her to give us a welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am very excited to be here and to see you all this morning. As Holly stated, this is our second of 3 trainings to be able to solidify and finalize our summer funding. And we are looking forward to receiving the end of program project plan so that we can actually see all the good that was done in the community. I am excited and honored to have joined this team, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you as we continue to bring great programming to our community. So thank you so much for taking your time to join us today.
Thank you so much, Gina. Also with us today is Miss Clay, and Sika will be joining us in just a little bit. She's listening now, but she'll be on screen to kind of close us out today. Dina's email address, she's going to drop it in the chat in just a moment, is dsnyder@cscleon.org. If ever you cannot reach myself or Miss Clay, please feel free. We have a new team member, so use her. She's available and open to you. As we do with all of our trainings and actually all of our program service committee meetings and our strategic planning sessions, even with our council, we always start with revisiting our theory of change. At the end of the day, our goal and vision is that all children and youth here in Leon County are socially, emotionally, and physically equipped to reach their full potential. And we believe that we do that by working in partnership with entities like you that are really making concerted investments in our 3 priority areas of success in school and life, healthy children, youth, and families, and stable and nurturing families and communities. As you know, because you've been through this process, we are very collaborative and we have kind of some lofty goals, and it is our hope and our expectation that through this partnership with entities like yours, that we continue to be that catalyst for positive change as we improve the lives and outcomes for children and families. So you've heard us say and kind of point to this theory of change, and you've also heard us say that we want to be partners in success. We want you to be partners in our success, and we want to be partners in your success. So please know that those aren't just words on a screen or on a script that we're following, that our team here and our entire council fully believes that the way that we create that impact in our community is by working together and by holding ourselves accountable. So that's why we're going through these trainings, to make sure that you understand the expectations for receiving funds from CSC Leon, and how do you turn that into reports that are meaningful and show that impact. So we're here today to talk about final reports. Before I jump into that, I do want to just remind everyone that you still do have a July report that will be due on the 10th of August. You will receive an updated email from me that has your updated reports that you provided previously. So that includes your budget worksheet and your family served worksheet with a new link to the July portal. Just so you know, the June portal is closed. You will not be using the same link to upload or provide a new report, but the format of that June report will be almost similar, almost identical to your July report. So know that we're not talking about that today. If you have any questions related to your monthly reports, I can resend you the link to that training, or you can reach out directly to either myself or Jacinta, and we can make sure that you get connected with the right resources. Today, however, we are here to talk specifically about the final reports. These will be due on or before September 15th. That is a Thursday, so there's no weekends for us to be worried about. That we will be looking for two things. One is going to be your report of expenditures. So as you recall with your monthly report, we're just asking you to kind of give us a budget tracking worksheet, just to kind of see where you are, to make sure that you're getting close to expending that full allocation that you already received. But for your final report, we're actually looking for that backup, that evidence for each of those line items and how you've spent the funds. What we're going to do today is walk through what that evidence might look like and talk to you a little bit about the format for turning that in and where to send that to. We also have the project closeout report, which is more of the narrative, plus a couple of other items that are going to be super unique to your contract. But we'll start first with the report of expenditures. Now, please know that we will have time at the end for questions, and actually in between each of these. So when I get to the end of a report of expenditures, we'll pause, we'll take questions at that point, and then the same thing with the project closeout. But do feel free to drop your questions as we go in the chat, so that we're able to come back and do them. If something's super pertinent to something I'm talking about immediately, feel free to use the raise hand function. It should be found if you're joining us from a PC in your lower taskbar, usually under options or reactions, or sometimes you'll find it under those three little dots at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a cellular device, wait, I'll make it pop up, on a phone, then it's usually down at the bottom in the reactions area. There should be an option for you to raise hand. That way you'll kind of pop up on my screen and I'll be able to see if you have a question. Okay. So for the report of expenditures, what we've done is we've grouped all of those line items. So everyone has the exact same template that they're using for your budget. All of our 30 programs that we have funded, all of them have the exact same line items. And what we've done is kind of group them to help just kind of make sense where some evidence might be the same. So for example, if you are paying salaries along with all of the fringe benefits, that might be evidenced by a copy of a pay stub. Now, I know many people, pay stubs could be a little archaic. Maybe you don't do those anymore. Maybe it's just an ACH deposit, but anything that shows how much money was expended for that time, with all, like, with those line items, especially if you're providing insurance or workers' comp or any of that stuff, so that we can see the dates and who it went to support. The other thing that we will say, or that I'll add here, this question came up yesterday in our training, and it was a great question. That for many of you, you might be tracking. So for example, with one of our individual projects, they pay, because this is an expansion program, they were paying their summer camp personnel for 4 days a week, but they were able to add a 5th day. So clearly their pay stubs isn't 100% going to be going to the CSC funds, but only a percentage of that was. So when we think through that pay stub, just mark on there on your copy of what percent is CSC and what percent is other funding. Hopefully that makes sense. Under travel, we group together here your daily travel, as well as those of you who budgeted to attend any conferences or training, things like that. All of those are kind of, we're grouping under travel. And we have kind of two different ways that we're really going to look at evidence for this. We will either accept mileage, or we would accept like rental car receipts and those gas receipts. We don't pay for your gas and mileage. The way that the federal rate for mileage is set up is to be inclusive of how much gas costs as well as wear and tear on your car. The other thing that I would like to point out is that the federal government changed their mileage reimbursement rate as of July 1st. And we have made the decision to honor that. So for your mileage tracker for the month of June, you could document and at the 44.5 or 48.5 what it was for the month of June, but for July and August, it went up. And so we will honor that, that increase for the months of July and August. This could also be where you would maybe have registration fees. So again, we're looking for evidence of expenditures, whether it's a registration confirmation that shows paid, like an invoice paid, something like that, that's tied to an individual person's name affiliated with your program service. And just side note, my child has decided to start hoovering his room right now. So if you hear some backup noise, I do apologize. I'm not going to shout at him to stop because that would just be annoying. But just in case you hear a noise in the background, I'm not in an airplane. That's just my kid deciding to vacuum his room while I'm in the middle of a call. Sorry about that, guys. So the third category, we've kind of grouped together as office expenses. We know it's much broader than that, but this could be anything from office supplies, your utilities, telephone, your telephone bill, your insurance, printing and publications, advertising. So types of evidence that we would be looking for any of this would, of course, be receipts. You'll see a trend here, receipts, receipts, receipts. For your occupancy, that rental agreement that shows the dates. And again, this is a great place where you can show maybe you had 2 rooms already covered in your original budget and you were adding a 3rd room because you added a 3rd teacher. So being able to break down that rental agreement and show that percentage of what CSC funded versus what is already funded under your original budget. Similar, your certificate of insurance payment stub, your utility bills, again, with those dates so that we can clearly see that. For those of you who are paying for advertising, usually there's some sort of contractual agreement, whether you're doing it with like Lamar, if you're doing a billboard, or even if you're just going through maybe social media, like a Facebook ad, if it's with a company, you can pull those ad contracts and maybe invoices. With Facebook or something like that, you'll be able to pull your bill directly from Facebook. And we just put a little note here that for anyone who is using the CSC funds for advertising, this is a great piece that you might want to include in your project closeout report. In fact, some of you actually put as part of your unique contract deliverables would be the results of those ads, especially those of you who are running community campaigns to help educate the public about something. So this is just some evidence that we would be looking for in this area. Another one of the kind of broad brushstroked groupings we have is equipment. So there were 2 specific line items in your budget that you could have put on, and that was for rental and maintenance, or actually the purchase, a capital expense. Several of our investment partners actually wanted to purchase vans. So this is exactly where you might show that bill of sale, again, receipts. If you had to rent equipment, there was a really great project that we read about that actually happened during the month of June with one of our investment partners, and they rented equipment for the month of June to be able to do projects specifically with the kids. So rental agreements, again, those dates are going to be important if you are using rental agreements. And again, if it was expansion, just indicate percent CSC, percent other funding. Program materials is another big group. So that would be things that you're using directly with the families and youth that you're serving, books and educational materials, food and nutrition, specific assistance to individuals. we're gonna talk a little bit about this because we're still getting perfect clarity for this. But again, receipts. So if you're buying if you're buying food for events, if you are purchasing books in bulk, anything, maybe you're putting together an entire packet for someone, receipts. So you can't hear me stress that enough. But it might be helpful for when you're organizing it to think of your schedule of events and to be able to kind of group them under that, so that you can maybe explain, for example, oftentimes you might say, oh, we're going to host 4 events over the course of the 8-week period or the 12-week period, but you purchased everything up front. But maybe you want to capture in your justification, it's for these different events, but we expended everything in the month of June to support all of these events. We actually saw that some already with your monthly reports for food and nutrition, where you might have been buying things in bulk, say at like Costco or Sam's, but it's for all of these different workshops that you might be hosting. So that's a great recommendation for how you can organize your receipts or kind of justify why you spent so much on your event budget up front versus day by day. For specific assistance to individuals, it might actually not be a 1099 or a W-4. We're getting complete clarity. So if you are providing cash assistance to individuals as part of your program model, I believe there's only one of our summer investment partners where this truly impacts. But basically, if you're providing cash assistance on a regular basis and that it's going to total more than $600, then you do have to report that for tax purposes. If this does not apply to you because you're not planning on providing cash assistance, just ignore this section, and we will work directly with the program that we know that this truly impacts. If you think you're skirting that line and you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us offline and we can help you walk through all of that. All right, we're coming to the end of our report of expenditures. We have a kind of a grouping for just miscellaneous items. So this could be subscriptions, dues, memberships, if you wrote that into your contract. Many of you have a lot under professional fees as well as other. And some of those we worked with you on flipping because oftentimes those professional fees are for subcontracts for very specific services. Maybe it's a consulting contract for legal assistance or for contract management or to bring in specific speakers for the workshops that you're doing, whatever that might be. So great evidence for this would be copies of those consulting contracts as well as those paid invoices or evidence of the invoices being paid. For the other category, most of you had at least one other. Some of you had up to 4 others. And so we will ask that for anything that you put in your original budget worksheet under the other category, that you not only provide evidence of what it is that you spent, but also that written narrative. So for example, if background screening was one of your others, just on your evidence sheet, and we'll talk about format in just a minute, you would write other background screenings and then have your receipts related to those background screenings for how many staff that you needed it to be done for. Similarly, if you had a contract for IT or I think one was for a web design program or something like that, the same thing would apply. You would just write other, label it, give us the proof right there, just so that we're able to very easily attach that evidence to that line item. Okay, so similarly, everyone had an administrative line. Not everyone used it, and the administrative line was super unique to each investment partner. For some of you, it was just a percentage of your kind of management overhead. For some of you, that was completely passed on to one of your partners. So for example, if you're hosting all of your events at the location of someone else, you kind of pass that administrative cost off to them. So whatever that was unique to your contract, again, we're going to ask you just that kind of written narrative justification as a reminder of how you came up with that administrative cost, and then provide the evidence that aligns with that. Right. So if it is that kind of percentage of your management overhead, we're going to be looking for those kind of pay stubs, again, with that percentage breakdown of what it meant for that particular program. Or maybe it's that agreement with your host site that says this is how much, and right, they're giving me X number of dollars for this services, and we have a copy of that, so everything is completely justified. The reason why all of this is so important, and the reason why we've been asking you to kind of track monthly, is that also part of your report of expenditures will be if you did not spend all of the funds the way that the budget allowed you to, and you need to return some of those dollars. It's always better to kind of ask for more and have some left over, as opposed to not have enough to meet the needs of our families. So any remaining funds that are not properly expended at the time of August 30th, that's when it closes, need to be returned back to CSC Leon within 10 business days. So we're asking that you return that along with this. So if you have questions about this, or you think in kind of doing your budget tracking, especially after that July report is turned in, that this is going to be you, I'm going to ask you to please reach out to us so that we can work with you. If you already know that this is going to be you, we will accept the reversion of assets. Just you can have a check written to Children's Services Council of Leon County, send it to our PO box, and that way we'll accept it that way. But just please, that's why we're having you do that tracking, so that we know that everything is being expended properly. If you have any questions about this, please reach out. Actually, this will fall into Dina's category, but until then, the entire team is available for you, myself, Jacinta, Dina, as well as Sika. So if you have any questions regarding the reversion of assets clause in your contract, we are here to help you. And finally, all of this will actually, we are hoping that you're able to send this electronically. Now, we get receipts are not the most easiest thing to send electronically. So what we recommend is a zip file of scanned and properly labeled receipts and those evidence, along with the completed budget worksheet emailed. So you would email the budget worksheet and then attach to that a zip file of just kind of scanned and properly labeled. We can provide you samples if this is new for you in terms of grant management. We can provide samples for you to help you kind of know what would work and what wouldn't work. If this is, you're like 19th grade and you completely know what you're doing, by all means, kind of follow your format. Or if you want to submit something and say, will this work? That's perfectly acceptable too. And with that, I'm going to pause to see if we have any questions related to the report of expenditures. All right, nothing's popping up. Oh, Ashley, feel free to unmute yourself and come to.
The question that I have is, are you wanting copies of cleared checks along with the invoice, or I know you're referencing receipts, but oftentimes we're paying, via check. Just wanted clarification on whether you need the where it cleared the bank.
I think that the proof of payment is fine for the purposes of this, because I know that sometimes, especially if you're paying someone on the 30th of August, if they haven't cleared it yet, I think the proof of payment is fine. I'm looking at Sika to see if she's in an agreement, but we can provide clarity if that's going to provide a problem. Does that work?
Yeah. So Holly, hey, it's Sika. I think if the cleared check is all that you have to show the expenditure, that's fine. But if when you paid by check, you were provided a receipt marked paid, then that would be the evidence that the expenditure occurred. We don't want to make this any more complicated than it needs to be. But in a situation where your canceled check or your cleared check is the proof of purchase, then you can absolutely provide.
Okay, yep, that works fine. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. The other Ashley, I thought, raised their hand. Did you still have a question, Ashley Scott?
Hey, good morning. No, I have no questions.
Oh, okay. Perfect. As we continue to go on, if another question pops up, feel free to drop something in the chat. Okay. I'm getting excited because the project closeout report is the part that I'm really most excited about, because that's really how we're showing our impact. So we're going to go through what the expectations are for you for the project closeout report. When you get to this, it's going to look very similar to your attachment 1 on your contract in terms of what we're looking for and what we really want you to reflect on in terms of what you proposed you were going to do versus what you do, what you've done over the past 3 months. So the first section will be an all program activity write-up. So this would include any subcontracts or partner expectations that you included in your contract. And we would recommend kind of following along in a chronological order for how you kind of do this all program activity write-up. And I'm going to dive into more detail about what that's going to look like. Your project closeout report will also include your final chart of families served. So that worksheet that you've been working on, this will be you turning in in essence, your August report that should tally up for your complete total on that last tab. Per your contract, we also asked for photography and impact testimonials. And so we are hoping for at minimum around 3 images. And you'll see here that we put a little asterisk. Clearly, if you're going to release images that have families or youth in them, you will definitely need an appropriate release from them, naming CSC Leon as a recipient. Oftentimes, summer programs might include kind of a general rider of, hey, we're going to take pictures and we might post them on social media, but that might be on your own platform. We want to make sure that any photos that you're turning over directly to CSC Leon, that any of the families, especially minors if they're included, are aware that they're being turned over to CSC Leon and could be used in future publications, could be used in impact testimonial stories on our website and in printed materials, things like that. So we want you to kind of think through that. At yesterday's training, we had a few questions related to photography. And so we're not specifically saying that we want a picture of, the youngest kid that you served, a cute little picture of them doing something. Think through the activities that you're doing and what this might look like. I know that for each of your different programs, you do different things, and some of you are specifically working with really young kids. Some of you are hosting workshops in the public domain with entire families. Others of you, your actual recipients are provider networks themselves where you're hosting trainings. So it's really going to depend upon how you want to capture with imagery the work that you're doing in the community, and keeping in mind anything that's in the public domain. I know yesterday Sika weighed in. I don't know if she's interested in weighing in again. Some ideas related to how you might depict activities with young people. Sika, I don't know if you can come off mute and share.
Yes. Keep in mind that we don't want you to breach any confidentiality or client confidence, but there's the ability to photograph youth from the back, very similar to what they do on the news. If the youth is younger than 18, blurred faces, just taking pictures of the the activities in which they are involved. So we want you to keep in mind, you can absolutely be creative and think about what you would do if you were trying to take pictures or illustrate for your own branding purposes or brochures or websites. You also would not want to reach your clients unless you have their express permission. If you need a sample of a photo release, we can absolutely provide that for you. And also remember that in the testimonials, you don't have to use full names, and you can also use pseudonyms and then state that the name has been changed to protect the confidentiality of the client. So there are lots of different creative ways that this can be done. This is pertinent as we do the final closeout because we want to be able to show the community that their tax dollars, their investment has been worthwhile. We want to be able to show them the children, youth, and families who have served. And it also helps as we move into this next year of funding. So if you have any questions or feel like you need a little support, please be sure to contact any one of the four of us. We'd be more than happy to help with that.
Thank you so much, Sika. And I will just kind of follow that up with next month's training is all about how to write those impact testimonials. So you're going to hear this message again about how important confidentiality and disclosure is. So just know that we try to tell you once, twice, 3 times to make sure that that we're supporting your ability to be successful as well. And the final thing in your project closeout report will be your unique contract deliverables, which I'll dive into in just a moment. All right, so for your program activity write-up, it's going to include 5 sections. Sorry, I'm getting feedback from someone and I don't know if it's me or not. Okay, I don't know where that's coming from. All right, so your program activity write-up will be in narrative form and it will include 5 sections. Again, this is going to look very familiar to your attachment 1 on your contract. So this is going to be a brief description of the funded entity and the program. So if you're an agency that has like 9 programs, but really CSC is only involved with one of them, what we really want to know is about that one program and not all the others. So brief description of the funded entity, more detail about the program, and this is where you would include information about any partners that you worked with, if applicable. We know that not all of you were working in partnership with others, but the vast majority of you definitely were pulling in those partners. The second section will be a description of the funded services provided. This is where I was mentioning that the chronological order preferred. So in June we did this, in July we did this, in August we did this. If your program actually didn't do anything in June or is going to be completely done by the end of July, you don't have to say we didn't do anything in June, right? Just wherever you started, that's perfectly fine, or wherever you ended. This is also where we really want to understand how the funds that you received expanded what was already available. So we really want to understand in that section of, in this section of how this was an expansion to help and enhance or provide more additional services or meet the needs of additional families and children. In the third section, it's all about population. So this is where we want a description of population served. This should match or reflect what your family served worksheet will reflect. And we also in this section want you to include a comparison to what you originally set out to serve and then explain why or why not. That's going to be very important. Many of you said that you wanted to serve very specific zip codes, and that was your intention, and you might have opened up slots for your summer programs, and then you were sold out within 4 or 5 days, and actually could have, had you had more money, might have even been able to open a whole nother classroom. Well, the question we want to know is, in those 4 or 5 days, were you able to recruit from the zip codes that you were planning on, or the types of families that you were planning on? So this is your opportunity to really compare, and we're asking you to not just report who you serve, but to reflect on if who you served was what you intended to set out. And so again, that's looking at that expansion piece of what you said you were going to serve. The 4th section of your program activity write-up will be a brief description of your data collection methods and tools, again, reflecting back from your attachment 1, and a brief exploration of those results. So we know that each of you are using slightly different tools to collect data and to measure impact. And so what we are looking for is, were you able to what were those results? If the goal was to serve 100 youth, did you serve 100 youth? If the goal was to do pre-post test on certain knowledge gains and achieve a 5% gain, what were the results? And so this is really just we use this, these are the tools we use, these are the methods we use, these are the results. Then in that 5th section, that's really where we want you to evaluate the results. Compare your expected impact with the actual impact. So each of you had in your contract what you were hoping to achieve. So we want to know, did you achieve that? And then reflect why or why not. Was it that you were hoping for more youth that didn't happen? Were you hoping to be able to go on to certain projects, but due to cost or sickness or whatever it might be, you weren't able to achieve that? Did you exceed the goals that you set up? And that's because you were able to have an investment or these certain enhancement tools, and whatever it might be. I have so many ideas that I could say, but they're so specific to each of the projects. So it's going to be very interesting to see how you reflect on this investment, this expansion dollars, how they were able to help you achieve those goals. And if you didn't, why or why not? Then this next area, this kind of like the last section, as we said, were the unique contract deliverables. I wanted to pull 2 up here. These are by no means what everyone was expected to do. These are just a sample. They might be these in fact might be yours that's on the call right now, but most of our summer partners were doing some sort of summer programming for young people. And most were choosing to not only do your attendance records, but then results from learning gains surveys. Some of you did pre-post tests, some of you were doing more of a retroactive. So whatever that might be, whatever your decision was, this is just a sample. So what we want to see is the specific results from each of those. So while in the narrative, it's more kind of a brief summary of, we hope to achieve 5% gains in these domains, we also want you to include a section that's actually the data, but we want it to be in aggregate form. I mentioned this because in your contract, client data, that specific data, that's for you to maintain, right? So that's documenting, their name, their address, income level, or whatever basis for determining eligibility, their specific participant outcomes. That's for you to maintain. With this summer funding, we have not provided you, or required you rather, to provide us specifically like by person or individual served. So what we're hoping for in your reporting tools is everything in aggregate form, but per your contract, we are asking that you maintain that record of client data. And if we need it for whatever reason, we might ask for a review upon request as part of your contract. But for the purposes of this report, that request has not been made. Everything can be submitted to us in aggregate form. So for turning this in, you will be provided an online portal very similar to your June and July report. If you need technical assistance, you can contact me for that. I made a little note here about the images. And again, you're going to hear this at next month's training. Our preference is a zip file for all of the images. Please attach them or zip them all together as a JPEG or a PNG. Do not copy and paste images into a Word document or into a Google Doc. That actually suppresses the resolution on the images and renders them unusable. So we really are looking for those high resolution images, group them all together, drop them in a zip file. If you don't know what a zip file is, we recognize that all of you have different tech capabilities. We're here to help. We will walk you through it. Worst case scenario, you can email them one at a time so that they are separate separate images, so that we're able to, when we turn around and use them for future purposes, to help tell the story and impact of children's services here in Leon County, that we're able to show your program and the families and youth that you're serving in the best possible light. And with that, I'm going to stop the share and open it up for questions. I don't see any hands up. I will scroll back through. If you joined us late and have not yet entered your name and agency in the chat, that is part of our official record to give you credit for being here. Please make sure that you do that before we close out. And I will actually turn it over to Sika to close us out today.
Thank you, Holly. So again, we won't belabor any points, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of the four of us, Holly, Dina, Jacinta, or myself. We will get you the answers that you need and ensure that you are compliant with your contract, with your deliverables, and the final reporting. Again, just congratulations on receiving this funding. We are excited that about 13,000 children and families will be assisted through this summer funding. And I don't know that we could have asked for any better outcome, considering we only gave you 21 days to apply and try to get the funding from the funding expended by August 30th. Last thing I will say, I think several of you have signed up for our provider forum that will happen tomorrow. We have had a few cancellations, so if you have not signed up and would like to, please go ahead and do so. We're going to serve you dinner and then go through some items that we think is pertinent for you to understand regarding the needs assessment and regarding where we believe our council will land on priority funding. We'll also talk a little bit about summer funding and applications that will happen in the spring, so maybe around summer, March, maybe around February, March for summer funding, because it will not look like this RFA that we did for this summer, and talk a little bit about innovation and what we foresee that being for the fiscal year 22-23. So that is it for me. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to follow up with email. We'll stay on a little longer so that you can get your name in the chat. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.